This is Washington. Great leaders, Jefferson, Lincoln, Washington, Roosevelt, have come here and passed on. It began as a lonely capital dedicated to liberty in a small nation on the edge of a wilderness. Today, in remote corners of the world, wherever men struggle for freedom and for dignity, they look to this city for hope and strength. For it is the capital of the United States of America, the guardian at the gates of freedom. The wealth, the power, the majesty of this city rests only on the people it serves. The men who come here are sent by you and your neighbors, and you can recall them if that is your wish. Here in the White House sits one of those men, the 36th President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson. From his desk, he commands the might of the most powerful nation this planet has ever seen. But you command him. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I've been in this office for almost a year. Ever since that black and unforgettable day when America lost one of its greatest leaders, cut down in the fullness of his manhood and promise. I've drawn much of my strength in this task from loyal and dedicated public servants. Most of all, I've drawn strength from the warm support and understanding of all of the American people. I will always be grateful to all of you for that. I am now on a tour that will take me to every section of our country to discuss with you the important issues of this presidential campaign. Few presidential elections in our entire history have presented, as this one does, a basic choice that involves the fundamental principles of American life. We must decide whether we will move ahead by building on the solid structure created by forward-looking men of both parties over the past 30 years, or whether we will begin to tear down this structure and move in a radically different and, I believe, a deeply dangerous direction. Most of you listening to me have felt the steady progress of American prosperity in your own life and in the life of your family. Most of you, more than ever before, can look forward with confidence to a steadily improving life for your children. Our prosperity is not just good luck. It rests on basic beliefs which a generation of leaders has carefully woven into the fabric of American life. Our prosperity rests on the basic belief that the work of free individuals makes a nation, and it is the job of government to help them do the best they can. Our prosperity rests on the basic belief that our greatest resource is the health and skills and knowledge of our people. We have backed up this belief with public and private investment in education and training and many other programs. Our prosperity rests on the basic belief that older Americans, those who have fought our wars and built our nation, are entitled to live out their lives in dignity. We have backed up this belief for over 30 years now with the Social Security system supported by every president of both parties. Our prosperity rests on the basic belief that individual farmers and individual workers have a right to some government protection against those forces which might deprive them of a decent income from the fruits of their labors. We have backed up this belief with a system of fair collective bargaining. We have backed it with agricultural programs which have kept the farmer from suffering the neglect and the despair of only a few decades ago. Today, our whole approach to these problems seems to be under attack. We are now told that we, the people, acting through government, should withdraw from education, from public power, from agriculture, from urban renewal, from a host of other vital problems. We are now told that we should end Social Security as we know it, sell TVA, strip labor unions of many of their gains, and terminate all farm subsidies. We are told that their object of leadership is not to pass laws, but rather to repeal them. And these views have been supported by a consistent record of opposition to Congress to every progressive proposal of both parties, Democratic and Republican. Well, this is a radical departure from the historic and the basic current of American thought and American action. It would shatter the foundation on which our hopes for the future rest. Too many have worked too hard, too long, to let this happen now. I propose to build on the basic beliefs of the past, to innovate where necessary, to work to bring us closer to a growing abundance in which all Americans can seek to share. The choice is yours. For 20 years, our country has been the guardian of the gate of freedom. Our cause has been the cause of all mankind. The strength of that leadership has come from the fact that every president and the leaders of both parties have followed the same basic principles of foreign policy. They have built our strength so that today America is the greatest military power on earth. They have moved with courage and firmness to the defense of freedom. President Truman met communist aggression in Greece and Turkey. President Eisenhower met communist aggression in the Formosa Straits. President Kennedy met communist aggression in Cuba. And when our destroyers were attacked, we met communist aggression in the waters around Vietnam. But each of these presidents has known that guns and rockets alone do not bring peace. Only men can bring peace. They have used our great power with restraint, never once taking a reckless risk which might plunge us into a large-scale war. They have patiently tried to build bridges of understanding between people and between nations. They have used all their efforts to settle disputes peacefully, working with the United Nations. They have never been afraid to sit down at the council table to work out agreements which might lessen the danger of war without increasing the danger to freedom. But today, these established policies are under the severest attack. We are told that we should consider using atomic weapons in Vietnam, even in Eastern Europe, should there be an uprising. We are told that we should break off relations with Russia, and with it, any hope of lasting agreement. We are urged to withdraw from the United Nations and to stop our help to other countries. We have heard the test ban treaty denounced. This is the treaty that has halted the radioactive poisoning of the air that we breathe. We are urged to threaten others with force if they don't do as we say. We are told, in effect, to withdraw into an armed camp with a few carefully selected friends and try to intimidate our adversaries into submission. Well, this kind of attack contradicts the entire course of America in our entire post-war period. If we should follow this course, if we should discard the tested policies of the last 20 years, the peace of the world will be in grave danger. I will not discard them. I will continue them. I will match firmness to strength. I will continue with all the skill at my command the patient search for lasting peace. Here again, the choice is yours. I will discuss these issues in the next few weeks. They are among the most important questions ever presented to the American people in all of our history. It is you who will decide these questions, and you will decide them on November the 3rd in the quietness of your polling booths across this great nation. No person can afford to sit comfortably at home, confident that others will take care of the job. You must work and register and vote, for this is truly a turning point in the history of our great nation. At stake is all that we have so carefully built so long, and all the hopes that rest upon it. I will do all that I can. I need your help. Then we can turn to our other work. Together, we will build the great society, a place where every one of us has the chance to seek happiness and fulfillment to the limit of his abilities. And we will work together to make this world a place where free men can live together in peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard the President of the United States from his office in the White House. How does a man come to this highest office in the land? President Johnson came to it in a time of crisis. For almost 2 centuries, American democracy has been equal to every crisis. When our needs have been great, we have found men of greatness. On November 27th, Lyndon Johnson came before a nation in mourning. In those first hours of shock and sorrow after the murder of President Kennedy, this man, chosen by our Constitution and by vote of the people, had taken up without faltering the burden and the glory of the presidency.
I profoundly hope that the tragedy and the torment of these terrible days will bind us together in new fellowship, making us one people in our hour of sorrow. So let us here highly resolve that John Fitzgerald Kennedy did not live or die in vain.
As hours turned to weeks, weeks to months, words became deeds, pledges became performance. In January, the President announced a lower national budget in a drive for more efficient government. Thus began an unbroken record of accomplishment. The President's program included the most progressive legislation in America's history to improve education, the largest tax cut in peacetime history, bills to implement the President's war on poverty, the most comprehensive civil rights bill in a century, a farm bill, a transportation bill, These and dozens of vital measures marked what President Johnson called a time for action. In April, a crippling 5-year-old railroad dispute threatened the nation. Weeks of intensive negotiation carried on in the White House itself met the crisis and resolved it. In Vietnam, in Panama, in the Congo, our policy remained firm. Around the world, we made it plain to friend and foe alike that the United States had not wavered in its determination to defend freedom or seek peace. Presidents are not born. Leaders do not spring up overnight. Behind this man's achievements as president lay a lifetime of public service. In 1937, the presidential yacht pulled into Galveston Harbor to welcome aboard 2 passengers, a governor of Texas and a young congressman-elect. The president and the congressman were worlds apart in background. Roosevelt, from a wealthy, famous family. Johnson, the son of a poor farmer. But they shared a belief in an America where rich and poor would share our nation's progress. Both men would dedicate their lives to making that belief a reality. In Washington, rural electrification, slum clearance, new schools, aid to farmers soon became part of the Johnson record. As war approached, he promised, "If ever I vote to send your boys to war, I'll be in uniform with them." 4 days after Pearl Harbor, Lyndon Johnson became the first member of Congress to go on active duty. Victory brought President Truman the challenge of defending world peace against communist aggression. Representative Johnson worked in Congress for the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan to rebuild war-torn Europe. These men were laying the cornerstone of today's powerful Atlantic Alliance. 1949, Lyndon Johnson was elected to the Senate. Joining him were Clinton Anderson of New Mexico and Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota, a new generation moving towards leadership. Senator Johnson soon won new responsibilities. Within 3 years, Senate Democrats elected him their second in command. 1953, Democrats gathered for the first time in 20 years as a minority in Congress. Senator Johnson was elected Democratic leader, the youngest in history. The role of a minority party, Johnson declared, was to solve the problems of America, not just to obstruct. For all Democrats, this was a call to responsible partnership in their government. The 1954 elections vindicated Johnson's leadership.
We rejected the theory in the 83rd Congress, and we'll reject it in the 84th, that it is the duty of the opposition to oppose. We try to be responsible, try to be constructive, and put the interests of our country ahead of the interests of our party or ourselves.
Under Lyndon Johnson's leadership in the 50s, the Democratic Congress was to become the dynamic center of the nation's government. As chairman of the Senate Preparedness Subcommittee, Senator Johnson led every bipartisan effort to make certain that America remained the most powerful nation on earth. When news of the Soviet Sputnik stunned and bewildered the American people, Senator Johnson demanded explanations. After investigating our space efforts, he proposed a special Senate subcommittee on space. This proposal would lead to the creation of the National Space Agency. During these years, Democratic leaders often gathered at the LBJ Ranch, home of the man now the party's highest elected official. Adlai Stevenson, Hubert Humphrey, and others came to discuss the nation's growing problems and to work at resolving them. As Congress adjourned in 1960, the Democratic Party, now rich in leadership, prepared for the national election. Many contended for the presidential nomination, but these men all shared a determination to get America moving again. The man chosen by the convention was John F. Kennedy.
I have said on many occasions that in these days of great challenge, Americans must have a vice president capable of dealing with the grave problems confronting this nation and the free world. I have reached the conclusion that it would be the best judgment of the convention to nominate Senator Lyndon B. Johnson of Texas for the office of vice president.
John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson traveled to every corner of America, bringing our people the same message: the need for leadership, the chance for greatness. I will go wherever John Kennedy wants me to, Johnson said, because I know we both want America to go up the same road toward greatness. The new White House team lost no time in meeting the nation's challenges. President Kennedy made certain that the vice president's experience and judgment were brought to bear on all major problems facing the new administration around the world. Abroad, the vice president carried the message of a reawakened America, dedicated to helping other nations to realize their own hopes in their own way. A few years before, an American vice president had been stoned in foreign streets. This time, the story was different. He came to a Berlin threatened by communist siege.
This island does not stand alone. You are a vital part of the whole community of free men. Your lives are linked with those on every continent who live in freedom and who are determined and prepared to fight for it.
The roads were open, the siege lifted. For years, Lyndon Johnson had been a Senate leader in the American effort to regain first place in the exploration of space. Now, as chairman of the National Aeronautics and Space Council, he saw those efforts bear fruit. For America, the flight of John Glenn's Friendship 7 would symbolize our return to a position of strength in the science of the future. For Lyndon Johnson, it justified his conviction that America was never a second-place nation when it got first-place leadership.
We of this generation of Americans believe that mankind has a rendezvous with greatness out among the stars. In the effort we make, in the challenges of the universe which we accept, we reach not for the symbols of power, but rather for the substance of peace.
No one could have been a better choice to welcome Glenn back from outer space than the man who had done so much over the years to put him there. Day by day, John Kennedy led his team on the road toward peace and progress. Then, on November 22nd, the impossible happened. The leader of that team was dead. Within 100 minutes, Lyndon Johnson took the oath prescribed by the Constitution and became our 36th president. For all Americans, there was grief. For one American, there was also, suddenly, the loneliness of the world's highest office and little time for private grief. It was a time to mourn, but it was also a time to lead. A lifetime of public labor had prepared Lyndon Johnson for this moment, but no man could be fully prepared. A man either grows with this office or it overwhelms him. A great nation in a troubled world cannot rest from vigilance. The president must not only guide us past danger, he must guide us toward a vision of greatness. May 24th, the University of Michigan.
The great society rests on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice, to which we're totally committed in our time. So let us, from this moment, begin our work so that in the future men will look back and say, it was then, after a long and weary way, that man turned the exploits of his genius to the full enrichment of his life.
The roads to the White House are many. In almost 2 centuries, only a handful of Americans have made the journey. For this man, it began on a small farm in Texas. It has not ended. No matter how long the journey, how crowded with achievement and success, it must begin all over again when it reaches the White House. Across that threshold lies responsibility for the people of America and for the children of that people in generations to come. Within those walls rests the duty to guard an ancient heritage of freedom and to help guide an entire world toward peace. And beyond that building is the exact and inexorable judgment of history and of those generations yet to come. We do not know the end of this journey, but what we do know can support a prophecy that this country will have cause to be grateful for the leadership of Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th President of the United States.